Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoterica. We got a fun episode for you guys this Friday because when I showed the Force 5 Atomiswave beta footage from the files I was sent from an anonymous collector in October, a few people were pretty eagle-eyed and spotted that this game actually became another game called Jingi Storm, and that's why you see the Atomiswave and Naomi logos there. Before we get too far involved though, go down below and hit like and subscribe, ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined, we have a Patreon link down there as well if you want to support the channel. And you'll see here we're going through the character select screen of Force 5, but what we're going to do is move over to Jingi Storm, because this is a game released in 2006 for the Naomi GD-ROM system by a company called Atravita. They've only ever made one game. I can't find a reference to them ever making a second one. And you'll see very quickly that what happened with Force 5 is it was a canceled beta Atomiswave game. And then this company here purchased the rights to those assets and reworked it into not a brand new arcade game, but kind of an asset swapped arcade game. So Force 5 did in fact come out fully, it just came out under another name. And you'll see here where we're fighting Gammon on the left hand side and Ryuya on the right. You're going to very quickly see that this game, Jingi Storm, is comprised of about 95% of the same assets as Force 5 was. And all they really did was swap the characters. Most of the models are the same, they just gave them new outfits. And all they really did was finish things up ever so slightly. When you're playing Force 5, you can definitely tell the game's unfinished. You can't really grapple very much whatsoever, but in Jingi Storm, they have completed those particular aspects of the fighting game engine, so it is a more fully featured game. Now, what I'm not showing you guys, and I did cut out, is Jingi Storm has a little bit of a hentai aspect to it. In between rounds, basically each fighter has a anime waifu girlfriend that you win off them if you beat them. That's not only a really strange and kind of awkward topic, to put out there in a video game. It's not something I want to show on my channel, so if you feel like playing Jingi Storm, just be aware that is in the middle. But you'll see here again, we switch back to Force 5, and we're in the Wild West, and that sign in the back, just a little bit of a bad translation, Wild West Ernest. And what's going to happen is you're going to see this exact same stage happen again in Jingi Storm. As we transition right here, we're in the exact same spot. We just have different characters. And it's really interesting to see one game become another, because most of the time when things are canceled, they never really come out. The only other example of a fighting game that did this that I can think of is Thrill Kill for the PlayStation 1 was canceled due to being too violent, but it was 100% finished, and they ended up using a lot of the assets and the engine for that to make a Wu-Tang Clan fighting game. But as far as canceled games are concerned, especially for the arcade, it is really rare that they end up being turned into a brand new product, especially because this developer, Atravita, like I said, I googled them. I could only find one instance of them being mentioned outside of this game. And that was from a Business Wire article from 2006 about them trying to break into the Latin American arcade market. Never heard their name again, so clearly they weren't full developers of games. They clearly couldn't make a game from the ground up, so they bought the Force 5 assets and turned it into Jingi Storm, which is even a weirder game. I mean, this guy on the right here, Shapiri, kind of looks like George Washington in a powdered wig, even though his face isn't the same. But he's using Kung Fu and making Bruce Lee style sounds, so their asset swaps don't even make a lot of contextual sense. But you'll see here, as Beck on the right, the game is using the same character from Force 5, they're just changing things ever so slightly. And I am going to put a direct comparison up in just 1 second here so you can see exactly what's going on, because the movesets are even identical. That's why you have that George Washington character having a really strange Asian sounding voice when he talks and when he makes noises versus what his character model would really look like. Because Chad and Beck use the exact same idle animation. They're the same character, all they did was change their clothing. And as we move on to another round here, we're in this kind of harbor with these sailboats and other trams going by, and it's the exact same stage that they took from Force 5. And it's just a really interesting instance because, like I said earlier, you don't get to see a lot of games that get canceled and end up actually releasing at a certain point in time, because Jingi Storm really is just Force 5 with slight character variations and a little bit of additional story. And I would say even some of the soundtrack is reused, and I'm going to show you an example in a little bit, but most everything comes from Force 5, and it's fun to be able to see what Force 5 was supposed to become, because now as we play it in Jingi Storm, granted this is the Force 5 footage here, you can tell what the game engine was trying to do. It feels very similar to Tekken, except there's not as many buttons to use. It's somewhere between a Virtua Fighter 5 and a Tekken. And in Force 5, you see here, we get this boss select screen, and we're able to select one of 3 bosses that we want to face before the end of the game. Move over to Jingi Storm, and we have these terribly drawn character portraits. I mean, Fenrir looks okay, but Asuka, that face is just really bad looking. I think this art came from somewhere else. But what is the first boss fight in Jingi Storm is just another arena from a normal stage in Force 5. So you really only fight 3 characters before you get to the boss rush of Jingi Storm, and then you have to beat 2 bosses in a row, actually 3. And that's just a really strange setup, is that you don't get many matches before you get into the actual boss area in Jingi Storm. And I would say I am playing this on normal. The difficulty is quite easy. Move over to Force 5 here, and now we're just fighting in the same boss arena from Jingi Storm, except it's just a normal round. And you'll see there, Del Sol was able to pull off a special move. None of the other characters in Force 5 have ever been able to get to do a grapple, so I'm not really sure what's going on there. And you'll see here in Force 5, Ralph is fighting G-Master, and he is the boss that we selected to face to be able to get through the game. Jingi Storm, where they just change his name to Jiao or Jiao, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, and they give him a slight palette swap to end up looking a little bit like Lan Di from the Shenmue series. So as far as turning one game into another, this is probably the easiest and honestly laziest ways that it can be done, and that's because I just think Atravita was not really a game developer. They may have been a publishing company that bought the assets and had somebody else patch this up into something new and kind of threw that hentai aspect in there to hopefully, get a little bit more press for it or, sell a few more units. You'll see here in Jingi Storm, we have to fight another boss that we would have been able to select in Force 5, and I have never beaten him. I tried about 10 times for this capture. The impacts that you are doing against him, all your strikes, barely take any damage off his life bar, and he blocks almost absolutely everything, just completely destroying us from start to finish. When we look at the comparisons here, we're in a gym, Gammon versus Shapiri. You have the guys boxing in the background, everything normal going on. You move over to Force 5, and again, it's the exact same stage. And it's just a really interesting look of how these games get developed. Like I said, you don't see this happen very often whatsoever, but from a historical standpoint, kind of seeing how games are developed and how they can develop further, it's one of the only examples of something like this happening that I really have to talk about. But like I said, a few eagle-eyed viewers of the Force 5 videos knew that this game became Jingi Storm, so good on you for realizing that. Short of that, if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. I love chatting with you guys. And like I said earlier, if you could do me a huge favor, hit that like and subscribe bell. Definitely helps us out. Otherwise, we will be back on Sunday and Tuesday with more videos and more arcade stuff as well. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.